the top line are all wasps. And I just got a little link yesterday. Somebody wrote a whole comparison between bees and wasps. People are afraid of wasps for a good reason, but they're also pollinators. They go to flowers, they get pollen on their bodies. If you look, some of them are hairy. This is a velvet ant. I just wanted to show that's a wasp. And we do see that on the trails. And you notice all these colors are warning colorations that animals learn, birds learn. Black and yellow stripes, bright orange means danger. And so you know that from your own life that you need to be wary of an insect that looks like this. But these wasps right here, they're social, and they do go to flowers, and they feed on the nectar and they feed on the pollen, which is something I wanted to relate. Is pollen is the reproductive organ for the plant. It carries the sperm and it carries it on the wind, or the plants use the insects to carry it for them. And so it's part of reproductive strategy for the plants to have pollen. So it does get stuck in the hairs on the wasp, and they go from one flower to a next, and they are effective pollinating. They feed on the nectar, and this is a mutualistic relationship to some degree. The thing with wasps, they do sting. They're predators. That makes them really different from bees. And I wanted to point that out. So you'll see them at flowers sometimes getting some energy from the nectar, especially, but they're predators. So they're gonna go sting a spider and carry it into their nest. They're gonna go sting and paralyze a caterpillar and take it to their nest. That's what they do. And they do take care of their young, and some of them have workers and queens. And look, there's a little fly visiting the wasp. Now, these other insects here I wanted to show are beetles. Beetles are also pollinators. They were the first pollinators. In evolutionary time, beetles were the ones that set flowers on their course of interacting with insects. And some of them, like this one right here, this really pretty little checkered beetle, when we went on the trail yesterday, they're all over the flowers and they're getting pollen on their bodies, and they do act as pollinators, right? So the thing that you have to remember is insects are eating the pollen. This is a predator-prey relationship between the flower and the insect, but the flowers produce so much pollen that it ends up being in their best interest to have these insects there, even though they're eating the pollen. They go to the next flower and they move the pollen to the female parts of the next flower. So even though we consider it mutualism, it's sort of a continuum between predation, where the insects are eating the stuff, and mutualism, where the insect is actually helping the plant. And it's a really dynamic interaction between the plants and the insects. So over here, you can see these guys are flies. Now, a lot of people think this is a bee. Look at the markings on it. This is a hoverfly or flower fly. Surfeit's the name of it. And they also go to flowers. They specialize on flowers. Their larvae live elsewhere, though. Their larvae are independent. They don't have maternal care. Then that's typical of these flies. Look how hairy that one is. This is a parasitoid. So it will go to flowers, but then it goes lays its eggs on caterpillars. You know, so these insects, here's a bee fly. Here's a bee. Look how hairy it is. It's really good at moving pollen, right? And so, and look at the mouth parts. I don't know if you can see.
You see how hairy I am after 2 months in isolation.
Okay, well, right. So the hairs trap pollen, and then the insects move.
Can I stand here, or is this
Yeah, that's fine. Now down here we have the ones that everybody knows, right? So all of these insects, and there are a lot more: flies, beetles, wasps, move pollen. But it's the bees that are the specialists, and I wanted to talk about why. The bees. Here's a queen bumblebee. She's gorgeous. You know, and you have honeybees, famous. Everybody thinks honeybee when they think pollinator, but I just showed you a whole bunch of other types, right, that move pollen. Here are the bees. Look, she's even got pollen on her hind legs. Look at this gorgeous little bee. Tiny little bees. I could have rows and rows of bees. There are thousands of species of bees. There are 100,000 species of wasps. But look at these guys. Beautiful. Here's a male and female carpenter bee. Female, male. His job is different. He tries to get a mate, and she tries to get nectar and pollen for her babies. right? And here's some other hairy bees. How gorgeous he is. Look at, he's like a teddy bear, this guy. So his job is to get a mate. So like he'll guard plants and then try to get a female, and then he guards with the carpenter bee where she's making a nest for her babies. So let me show you that for a second. We can put that away. So the point is I wanted to show you, everybody thinks bees and flowers, right? But I wanted to show you, when you look at flowers, they're going to have beetles, flies, wasps, bugs, true bugs, all kinds of insects are in there eating the pollen and taking this resource away from the plant. But the plants get an advantage because the insects, they have it all over them, right? And then they go to the next flower and pollination occurs, which is fertilization for the plant, which, as you know, plants are rooted in place. Now, either they're going to use the wings of the insects, the wings of the hummingbird, or they're going to use the wind. So there are lots of trees here, for example, that do not have those showy flowers. They have these flowers, and we'll show you some when we go out on the trail, that blow in the wind, and then the pollen's all in the air, and that's why all of you are wearing masks. Or is it COVID maybe? I don't know. But wearing a mask right now is a good idea because of the pollen. So I wanted to show you what the carpenter bee does. This is a fence post. Well, it's a little stake that a friend of mine, can you see it?
Yep.
Gave me, because he knew I was teaching etymology, and you see the hole. So he cut it open, and here is the carpenter bee. What she did, she made this burrow with her mandibles. Can you imagine biting into wood with your mouth parts? But anyways, she makes these little chambers and she packs it with the pollen. So you see, it is part of a predatory relationship. She's collecting pollen to give to her babies. And so she has these different cells here, and they will mature. She provisions it with pollen, and that's what she does. She goes around, she feeds on the nectar, and she gets pollen on her, and then she packs it into these cells for her offspring. That's what bees do. Wasps don't do that. Wasps are predators. They grab caterpillars and all kinds of spiders and pack their nests with those.
You want us to zoom in on the chambers?
Oh, if you want to, yeah. I mean, it's got the tape on there. So that's what a bee does. A bee collects the materials, the nectar and the pollen especially. And I want to show you some of the things that make it special before we go out. The reason I have to do this is because insects are small, and we have to rely on photographs before we actually go see them. So can you see that okay?
Yes.
These bees are eating pollen. So is the ant. They're eating it. So that's what I'm saying. They are preying. They are eating this resource. And so the plant does have to produce a lot of it and bring the bees in, but then the bees get it on top of them and take it to the next flower. And what's really important is the bees learn which flowers are very rewarding, and they go to the same species again and again and again. So this is what I call the flower feeder toolkit. These are the mouth parts of a butterfly, a bee, and a fly. And the bee, look how long her mouth part. She can make that into a tube where she sucks the nectar. So that's part of her toolkit. They got to get in there to get the nectar. And some of the flowers make it hard. They make it so that only a bee can do it, because the bee is such an effective pollinator. She doesn't want the wasp coming. The flowers, some of them have become bee specialists. And so the bee has this really, and by the way, they have to fold this up when they fly. Right. I mean, you don't want this stuff hanging out when you're trying to fly, right? So when you see a bee flying around, this is all tucked in. And then when she gets to flower, she whips it out and starts feeding. So these are some of the other pollinators. These are beetles all over that plant. This is the checker beetle that we see on the trail here. And here's the wasp. Everybody's afraid of that's a yellow jacket, right? But they do move pollen, as they said, but they're not the dedicated. Here's the Swiss Army knife of an insect. This is a honeybee leg. It's got this part called a rake and a press. So that's her hind leg. She combs her body. She combs her body with her hind leg and packs the pollen into these combs right here. This is a pollen basket. Look at that. And we're going to see that when we go out in the field. I think we can zoom in on the bumblebee because they're big. Look at this. She's taking that home, and that's what I said. That's what makes it a bee. Bees take pollen home and they give it to their babies. That's what they're doing. But they're also, this is the hair. This is a scanning electron microscope picture of the hairs on a bee. The hairs are
Wow.
specifically designed, so to speak, to carry and catch pollen. Wasps do not have hairs like this. So this is the toolkit, the Swiss Army knife that makes the bee the pollinator par excellence. And that's why everybody thinks bees are pollinators, right? I mean, they're dedicated their life. I'm going to get pollen. I'm going to give it to my babies. It's so cool. So this is a bumblebee that Edward got a picture of where you could just see, look at that, gorgeous. And then he found this bee was on the California poppy. She was holding on to the side, bracing herself while she was combing her body. She was combing, packing the pollen, holding onto the side with her mandibles. So it was a real task for her to get that together like that. So I think we're going to go for our walk. We're going to go see if we can find some bumblebees. There's a trail here that goes all the way around that's wheelchair accessible. And you can go into the shaded area and close to a little creek. And I'm sure there are even more flowers there in the shade than what we're seeing here. Grasses are wind pollinated, and some of you know that causes a lot of trouble for allergies, doesn't it? There's a bumblebee. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of bumblebees over here. So what you're seeing is not a native, those are not native grasses. And they grow up tall, and in between you see these fiddle neck flowers. Can you see those okay?
No.
Yellow color also is something that would attract the insects. So insects go for purple, white, pink, yellow, orange. There's a bumblebee. And if you watch the bees, they're going to be specialists. Like there's some bees going to this cow vetch, and she's going to keep doing that. She learned how to handle that flower. She's going to just keep going to that flower type. And then when we go over to the lupin patch, you're going to see bumblebees that are specializing on lupin, and they learn how to handle the flower, and which is in the flower's best interest. Okay, we call it flower constancy. From the bee's point of view, they get good at it and they stick with it. And from the flower's point of view, the pollen goes to the right individual, right? Okay. This flower over here is typical insect pollinated as well, because it has a platform for them to land on. So, you know, I could see a lot of flies would come to this. There are beetles all over it. Oh, wow. Yeah. See the beetle in my hand? Now, is that cute or what?
Looks buggy to me.
Oh, he's adorable. Although it could be a dermestid. I don't really like dermestid, but it
Discrimination.
so beautiful little flower. Now, you know, you never know if you have a camera that has the right filter on it, there might be some UV coming off of this. Yeah, look, there's beetles all over this. Remember I was saying beetles? There are beetles going to these flowers. Yeah, it's hard to see the tiny things. Okay, so one thing about the insect pollinated plants is they are going to have landing platforms usually. Some of the insects can hover, like the hoverfly and the bee fly. But if you watch the lupins, which are gorgeous, and I know that you have lupins in Canada too, right? Oh, beautiful. Let's see if we can find the bumblebees. Beautiful, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, where's the bumblebees?
All right, point them out. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, where are they?
They'll be back.
They'll be back.
There's
But
a
if you
little,
look-
there's a little one right here.
yeah, there's some little solitary
Okay,
bees.
yeah, that's osmia. That's a mason's bee. It's kind of green black.
So that voice you hear is Edward Rooks. He's my husband. He's a naturalist, artist. The lupins have these landing platforms that also forces the bee to go in there, and it gets pollen all over. It's all those fancy hairs I showed you. And then they'll have to package that.
That time I
pollen
fell.
up. And they have to work hard to get the nectar. And it also keeps non-effective pollinators out of there. So I think the lupins mostly are going to have bees going to them. They're like, you know what, we have a contract with bees and we only want bees. Now, some insects will come in and steal the nectar. They'll cut from the backside and not be pollinators. They're called nectar thieves. Let me tell you about bumblebees while we're waiting for one to come by. This is really cool. I'm going to show you the inside of a bumblebee colony. Can you see that okay?
A little closer.
Can you see that here's a queen, really big, and then you get a worker. Those are her daughters. They're social, right? And so the queen produces these little workers that go out, and she becomes the egg layer, and they're the workers. And they make this beautiful set of storage pots. So you can see that, okay, Richard? So they store nectar in little pots, and they store pollen. So they're bringing all of this stuff back from the flowers. And remember, the flowers do have an agreement with the bees. Some of that pollen ends up being moved from one flower to the next. But in the meantime, the bees are using all that to raise their babies. And so the larvae are going to be in there. And as I said, that's what makes a bee, is that they use the pollen for their babies. Now I want to show you a bee fly. Can you see the bee fly? That's a fly. And they hover, and they call bee flies because people think they're bees. Flies are not bees, and this does not use pollen for her babies. She actually lays eggs, and I've seen them shooting their eggs at beetle larvae. They'll like fly around, they'll find a beetle larvae, and they start pummeling it with eggs. And here's a beetle larva. Do you see that? With the fly larvae. The bee fly is a parasite. So again, it's using animal tissue to feed its babies, whereas the bee is using the pollen and nectar. So a lot of people think a bee fly is a bee, but it's a fly, and it actually kills other insects, just like wasps do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And see how she has pollen all over her? It's pretty cute. So this was in our backyard. The female has a burrow, and the male was in there. Here's his face. He's guarding the entrance. He like owns this female. So she has a burrow, and he's in there. He's like, okay, she's mine. I got a female now, boy. So he's just totally cute. So
Except for Osmia, but there's
there's
no
no bumblebees.
It's a nice Osmia.
See, where
It's on the back of this little.
I keep pointing and
Oh,
out.
did the bumblebees like do all their work and then go home? We saw some gorgeous ones today. Huh. Oh, I see a bumblebee. I don't know if she's gonna come close, but
He's in the back of
Oh,
them.
there he is.
she's right there.
Oh, she's close.
She's a little worker.
He got orange pollen on his hind legs.
She. Oh, that's right. We need to say the workers are female. Oh yeah, look at, yeah, she does have the orange pollen. You see her there? There she is. There she is. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, she's over there. Now they tend to go to the flowers at the top of these spikes. Oh, here's a crane fly. Because the ones lower down have already been matured and pollinated, and so the flower just keeps putting out new and new flowers on the top of the spike, and the bees know that. I mean, they're very efficient. They learn to go to the top. So we're gonna walk by a walnut tree, and it has the other kind of flowers. They're beautiful, but you see how there's no color. They hang. Oh God, did you see the pollen come out of that? Why did I just do that? So this is a wind pollinated. This is like the early evolution of flowering plants as well as wind, but it's not efficient. And so those plants that formed an association with insects were able to produce less pollen, but then they have this contract with insects. They develop color and landing platforms and nectar and
We are going off trail, everybody. We do have a special permit, educational permit, as you may or may not know. So if you were here on by yourself, you must stay on the trail, okay?
Bushwhacking.
you see I'll let you zoom in on that colony. They are Italian strain of the honeybee. And they obviously they're naturalized, I guess you could call it that. They aren't just part of agriculture. They do live in nature. We have seen a number of colonies at Rancho Cañado de Oro. When we go out on the trails, we'll see a colony once in a while, right, Edward?
Yeah.
And so we spotted this one the other day, and I want to talk about honeybees because they have some skills that are absolutely extraordinary for increasing their efficiency of handling flowers as a resource. So we were here 3 weeks ago, and there were completely different flowers out here, different patches, different locations. So how do the bees, which are constantly looking for nectar and pollen, take into account that this is a shifting resource? The honeybees have this ability to keep track of what's going on in the field, and they tell each other where the food is. So I want to show some pictures of that. They make wax from their own bodies. I don't know if people realize. Talk about a Swiss Army knife. Swiss Army knives can't make wax, but they can make wax from their bodies, and they make the comb inside, and they pack it. They have part of the comb has pollen packed in it. Part of it has the honey, which they make from nectar, and they feed their babies with that. They can use it storage for their own food, right? The workers are female. There's a queen, but the thing, so it was Carl von Frisch got a Nobel Prize for this. He figured out that honeybees do what's called a waggle dance. So can you see this okay?
Mhm.
So when she comes back and she was successful at finding food, she goes onto the comb, and the other bees assemble around her, and it's completely dark in the hive, by the way. And she does what's called a waggle dance, where she waggles her body and then she swings around and waggle, waggle, waggle. And you can find this sort of thing on YouTube. They have waggle dances where you can look and see how they do it. It's a symbolic language. So how fast she waggles and what direction she is in the vertical hive tells the bees where the food is. The energy she uses in the waggle dance tells them how far they have to go. They can also smell her and taste her, and they know a little bit more about the flower, but she tells them what direction to fly in. And so what we get, hopefully you can see this, is she uses the sun and the hive symbolically up. If she goes up in the hive with her waggle, she means fly straight towards the sun when you come out. If she goes at an angle, like if she goes at this angle, they come out, they look at the sun, and they go at that angle, and they find the flower patch. So I call it symbolic because they're saying, okay, here's the sun, here's the hive, and I'm going to show you what angle to take. You guys come on out, figure out where the sun is. And they use polarized light, by the way, so even if it's cloudy, they can tell where the sun is. They also have a fantastic circadian rhythm when they become a forager. So she's about 3 weeks old as an adult when she comes out, and she becomes this specialized forager. But I wanted to mention there's a lot of work, a very sophisticated work on neurotransmitters, gene expression, etc. in honeybees. That they also have some of the workers, they're all sisters, by the way, become scout bees. So you see this one with the helmet. It's a risk taker. Some of the sisters are more likely to say, you know what, I'm tired of these flowers. I'm going to go try something else. And they have this job of looking somewhere else. And they come back. They're the ones that find the new resource. Because you think, how do they ever go to a different patch if everybody's going to the same patch? So some of the bees, and what's really funny about them is they find that the neurotransmitters in the brain are exactly like teenage boys. I mean, the exact same neurotransmitter transmitters of these risk taker teenage. Were you a risk taker, Richard? It's the same thing. They actually are risk taker bees are the ones that find the new flowers, and then the colony itself will slowly move towards. Okay, well, we're going to listen to this one because the resources are diminishing in that lupin patch. Let's go to the other one now. Is that cool or what? Yeah, he said yes.
What was the damage you said was on the tree?
Oh, there's some sapsucker. So you see the little holes? Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of things, but the tiny little holes that look like pinpricks almost is a woodpecker, the sapsucker, red-breasted sapsucker. Yeah, actually a lot of the trees here have, I don't know if we can, that one over there also. And so they come and they do these lines of holes, and it causes the sap to spill out and accumulate. And then the sapsucker comes back and feeds on that and the insects that have come to it and get stuck in it. We've seen the sap pouring out of fresh holes like that. And oh gosh, Edward, what was going to, everything was hummingbirds,
bees, wasps, hornets.
Yeah. Yeah, there
moths,
were so many
butterflies.
creatures coming to check out the sap, and then the sapsucker can come in and like, oh, I might as well just eat these, right?
Other woodpeckers.
So it's a different kind of woodpecker. Other woodpeckers, you know, make the holes, and they can tell where there are insects under the bark, and they eat the insects. But this one sort of makes the holes that creates an attractive, sugars, and then everybody comes to check out the sugar, and then the sapsucker gets to eat them. We saw some fresh holes yesterday, absolutely brand new sapsucker holes on the trail. They said that mammals cannot produce the color green. So you never see green fur in a mammal unless it's a sloth that has algae in it, I guess. Yeah.
How about Swamp Thing?
Yeah. See, it has to be imaginary. So here's the buttercups. And so there's a, what is that? Yeah, that's a beetle. Oh, or is that a bug? It's a beetle. Beetles love flowers and pollen.
That's a great shot.
People don't think about that. Those were really the first pollinators, were the beetles. Really nice.
What's this one? This little one right here, Janice.
Oh, that's a bee. That's a sweat.
Can
That's
you point to it? Oh, yeah, I see. Oh, where'd it go?
She just flew.
Oh, okay.
She's still looking at. Oh, so that was a solitary bee. So when we say, here's another one.
Okay.
When we say, is that a bee? Yeah, and you can see the pollen on her hind legs. Oh, I didn't know, she's got pollen all over her. Some of the bees collect the pollen on their abdominal hairs, but these small bees are solitary bees. So she's a mother with babies. She doesn't work with her sisters or anything, if that makes sense, or her daughters.
Nice tree.
Oak tree, beautiful.
I got a bug crawling on my ear.
Trying to get your pollen out of your ear.
Well, hopefully not. Nice to hear the birds singing, isn't it? Yeah. So the oak tree still has flowers on it. You see the flower? That causes a lot of allergies. But you know what we find is that there'll be sap coming out of some of the leaves, and the honeybees will come for that too. So you'll see honeybees very opportunistic at what they're collecting. I mean, everybody thinks of them as dedicated to flowers. Look at this here. You see how the leaves are chewed up? There's some bees, and I don't know if a bee did this, that will scissor the leaves, and then they coat the little cells that they make for their babies. They'll coat them with leaves, and a lot of the leaves have antibiotic properties. So that, you know, the leaf cutter bees, have you ever heard of them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're so cute. Oh my God. They collect the pollen on their abdomen. They have this little hairy abdomen, like little teddy bears. So cute. And the female cuts leaves. It's interesting. I'm kind of wondering if that's what's been doing this. Look at that. I mean, it could be a caterpillar eating it.
They look
But-
really circular like that. Yeah,
They do look circular. Yeah. And
they
I've
used
seen
to
it
cut
all.
the rose leaves
Oh,
in
they
Mountain
do?
View. And also there was like a purple flowering vine. They would
And
cut.
eucalyptus. They love eucalyptus, which I think has really good antibacterial properties. And so then they coat they go inside stems and they put those leaves in there to protect their babies. And then they collect the pollen again and provision it for their babies. So that's one of the lessons I wanted to give today. It's like bees are really the flower specialists, but they're not the only pollinators, right? And what makes them a bee is they collect pollen and they give it to their babies. And that's a really interesting relationship that has evolved through this mutualistic interaction between plants and insects, I think. And I think that's why so many people celebrate bees. He's gonna keep going behind the oak tree.
Oh, there he is. So let me catch up.
We saw about 10 newly hatched turkeys here yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Good
So
luck
for
trying to
those of
find
us who
them.
came in late, could you tell us again where we are?
We're Rancho Cañado de Oro, which is connected to Calero County Park. So it's Morgan Hill, right? At this point. Really
Good
nice
shot of the
trail.
turkey.
Yeah.
He gobbled. Or was
He's
that you?
by himself.
That was funny that he gobbled. So I'm not an expert on turkeys, but I do think that if you see a single turkey, it's a male.
Beautiful.
The females stick together. There'll be like 2 males that might be in charge of a harem of females. This guy is a solitary male, so he's a bachelor. He's been
You're
booted
too
out.
far away.
Too far away.
No, I mean the voice. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, is this the wind?
Really? I was right next to you.
Oh, okay.
The turkey that would be a male. The females do stay together in groups usually.
There's a really nice documentary called My Year as a Turkey that you can find.
I love that one. That is fantastic. You know, because here you have this. People make fun of them. They think they're stupid. They're really smart, you know. And the youngsters have to learn from the adults what to eat. Same with chickens, right?
And they're very difficult to hunt. And actually, Benjamin Franklin wanted them to be our national bird instead of the eagle.
Right. What's neat is earlier this spring, we've been seeing the males display to the females. I'm sure that you've seen pictures of them or even seen them in real life where the male will put up his huge tail. He has a partner. Usually it's another male. There's a deer running across the pasture right now. Oh my goodness, that's going to be way too far. Look at him.
Oh, we got it.
He's running up the.
There he
Oh,
goes.
there it is.
We got him.
Oh.
He stopped. He
Good
started.
grab, Richard.
Hmm?
I'd say good grab.
Mhm.
Well done.
Venison and turkey for dinner tonight.
He's still running.
The parks department won't like that.
No.
In
Oh, there's
Canada,
another one. There's another one.
in Canada, if it moves, it's dinner.
There. And they
There it
both
is.
stop. They both stop and look. You make sure.
I think it's because the 2 people are walking on the trail and they're right near to where the deer will hump it down.
Mhm.
Yeah, the deer didn't. Yeah, they reacted to the people. Very interesting. Okay,
Very good.
guess we're.
Are they whitetails?
No, blacktail.
Blacktails, okay.
Oh, they heard you. Oh, well, let's see what else we see. We hear the birds singing.
There are a type of deer called mule deer and
Yes.
a local variety called the Colombian blacktail deer.
I just have a quick question. Are there any, are there ticks in this area or not? Ticks.
Are there what?
Ticks.
Oh, yeah. I haven't, and that's why I wear light colored pants actually, but we haven't encountered the ticks yet. Did you just find one?
No, it was a beetle. It looked like
A
a tick.
beetle. But yes, that's right. You don't normally want to go off the trail. It's a beetle. It's all right.
It's a green beetle.
It's a good reason to stay on the trail. Absolutely, in the middle of the trail. The other thing is on this trail is great because it's wide open. You know, wheelchair accessible. The edges are mowed, so you aren't going to have ticks. But when you're out on the trail here, you got to watch out for poison oak. It's everywhere, and it leans into the trail, etc. Going off the trail is not a good idea.
Hope you enjoyed Rancho Canada del Oro with Janice Brooks. Again, newly paved trail. Come out and visit. It's about a half a mile? Is it about 3/4 of a mile, half a mile?
I know it's pretty good because it goes through different habitat, even though it's not very long.
It isn't, but it's very enjoyable. Like you just seen, we saw some deer and we've seen some turkey, lots of woodpeckers, lots of
Oh
wildflowers,
yeah, that's native pigeon.
lots of
just flew
bees
by.
and beetles to appreciate. And so come out and visit when you have a chance.
And there's a creek too. There's
It's a
a creek
beautiful
with
creek.
dragonflies and
And even little native endangered rainbow trout. Next month is going to be Janice Rooks and her husband Edward Rooks over at Ulistack Natural Area, where Janice will be taking us on a hike simultaneously at the same time, while Edward paints something.
I think we're gonna specialize on monarch butterflies.
Oh,
so
cool!
not much of a hike so much as let's talk about monarchs. Huh?
Great, yeah,
Monarch butterflies, really fantastic.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. They're not doing so good here.
not doing so
We're looking
good.
to be extirpated. So the more education we do, the better for everyone. Okay, so thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Take all
Thank
the
you.
best
Thank you
care.
If
too.
you're in Richard's area, drop by. It's turkey dinner tonight. Bye-bye.